Hello! Welcome to Levels Plus Whenever episode 130. And as you can tell, I have a little extra assistance today with this cattail sticking up in the middle of the video. I'll keep the intro short. We're doing something different today. We're going to be ranking my favorite band's albums, Our Lady Peace, since they are celebrating their 30th anniversary this year. I don't have any pickups either, so let's just jump right on in. Alright, we're doing something a little different today, and we're gonna do a little ranked of my favorite band, Our Lady Peace. When I was putting this together, I kind of forgot they've only done 10 albums over their 30-year career. I didn't want to include live or the acoustic Spiritual Machines. I didn't think that would be fair. I didn't include like Transparent Humans, which is a collection of B-sides, or the greatest hits albums. I wanted this to just basically be their actual LPs, since they've never done an EP. And just kind of talk about each album a little bit and talk about their impact on me. I discovered Our Lady Peace in about 1999 with Clumsy. And Topsters has changed a bit. So now we've got X's to indicate when you can interact with something. So that'll be helpful for you as a viewer to know what I'm hovering over, because you can't see my cursor. And now I can't accidentally grab an album and throw it off of here anymore, so that'll be nice. And I loved Clumsy. I thought it was such a unique sound. Nobody else sounded like Rain. And they captivated me like almost immediately. I bought Happiness shortly after, because it was out by that time. And I love that album a lot as well. And then Spiritual Machines came along and basically destroyed my sense of what music could be. And revolutionized it and reinvented it and told me this is one of the greatest albums of all time. A friend gifted me Navid around the same time that Gravity came out, maybe a year later. So Gravity was definitely a shift. The band no longer was working with Arnold Lani, who was the producer of the first 4 albums. They went with Bob Rock, who defined a very different sound for the band that had its most commercial success with Somewhere Out There and Innocent. The band has never been able to recapture that. And that's going to color the remaining 5 albums on this list, but we'll get to those momentarily. Navid is a very strong debut album that I was not able to find easily until my friend got it for me for my birthday, which was incredibly nice of her to do. So I had basically enriched my soul with these 5 albums, which I do think all of them are good to, as I said about Spiritual Machines, revolutionary for me. Healthy and Paranoid Times took 4 years to finally come out. And it was not the follow-up that I think Sony wanted. It was not the follow-up that the band wanted. They almost broke up recording Healthy. It was a very turbulent recording session. There was a bunch of B-sides of songs that never made it onto the album that honestly some of them should have. Not Afraid and Vampires, Hurt Yourself. All excellent songs that I think are better than some of the ones that actually made it onto the album. But we'll get into that when we actually start ranking these. The catastrophic recording sessions for Healthy colored the band through their next 2 albums. I think that a big rift had formed between their drummer Jeremy and the rest of the band. because his energy on Burn, Burn, and Curve is absolutely lacking. And he left the band shortly after Curve's release. And Burn, Burn, and Curve are ultimately their weakest albums, as we will get to when we actually rank these. There's a few good songs, but there's definitely a higher ratio of mediocre to, honestly, a couple really bad songs that I don't like listening to at all. The band would take a little break after Curve, find a new drummer with Jason, and release Somethingness in 2 parts, and basically folding into a 9-song LP. That is a step in the right direction, but it is not as good as their first 5 albums. But it is a step in the right direction. I don't think that there's many songs on that I think are mediocre. I think that a good chunk of them are good. And you can start feeling passion, not only in the sound of the music, but in Rain's voice. And Spiritual Machines 2 is actually a very triumphant album, because it's definitely the band clicking on a level that they haven't achieved since Gravity, and is a worthy successor to the original Spiritual Machines in a lot of ways, because it's going to be a top 5 album for me. They've been doing some 30-year anniversary EP greatest hits stuff with one new song in some remastered singles and a couple B-sides. And those 3 songs are really, really good. Sound the Alarm, I Want to Be Your Drug, and No Angels in This Town, which I've listened to about 3 times since I purchased it like half an hour ago. They're really good, and I feel like wherever they land next is going to be really something special, possibly up there with their best work in the 90s and early 2000s. But these are the 10 albums we have now, and you've got a little bit of my personal history and kind of my initial thoughts on where I'm going to be placing things. Let's actually start placing stuff. So I only have 10 slots here. I'm not going to rearrange this to add a 5th or a 3rd row to move around things. I think we'll just kind of shift these around where I feel they should go, and then once they're all in place, I'll talk about them from the bottom up. So you might have guessed, Burn Burn is my choice for their weakest album, with Curve slightly ahead of it. I feel personally, and I've been thinking about this, what would go into that 8th place spot? Honestly, I think it's actually Healthy. I think Healthy would be my 8th place pick. I think Somethingness is going to be number 7. I think Gravity is number 6. In terms of the top 5, I think Naveed is here, Spiritual Machines is here, and I think we are basically set to where we need to be for my personal top 10 Our Lady Peace albums. So let's start with Burn Burn. Let's get into the nitty-gritty about what's up with this album. Burn Burn almost is like how I would describe the sound, that they're burned out. They took a few years to release Burn Burn. They were really trying to recapture the magic of Gravity without a major label, because this was their first independent release. They got people outside of the band to help write the lead single, All You Did Was Save My Life, which is a good song, but it is one of those songs that is straining at the edges to be popular instead of sounding authentic and sounding like something that the band organically came up with. In terms of songs that I actually like on this album, Escape Artist is easily the best song. I think that is one of their best slow songs. Is one of the ones that Rain really pushes his voice on. And I really do like that one a lot. All right, looking at the track list just to remind myself. The other two songs that I think are really good are Monkey Brains and Dreamland. Dreamland was like the third single. Paper Moon's alright. But that's kind of where my opinion, like All You Did Was Save My Life. That song's also alright. So like that's half of the album. I think The End Is Where We Begin is the weakest single Our Lady Peace has ever put out. It was the second. They really should have done something else. White Flags is my least favorite Our Lady Peace song. Honestly, I really do not like that song. I think it's just another one of those songs that's just trying too hard. Refuge is basically a repeat of Boy from Healthy. Signs of Life and Never Get Over You are perfectly mid. And yeah, it's just not the album that I think anybody really wanted. And then they released some bonus tracks, and those ones are easily some of the worst Our Lady Peace songs. I don't even have them. They're that bad. And I earn them. I have the ability to own them. I choose to not have them on my playlist because they're just that bad. So Burn Burn is really where the strain was showing with the band post Healthy. And outside of Escape Artist and Monkey Brains and Dreamland, that's easily an album you can skip, in my opinion. Escape Artist is probably the only song I would pull if I were to create like a definitive Our Lady Peace sound across the years. Maybe Monkey Brains. Because Monkey Brains honestly is a song style that they repeat a lot post Burn Burn, which is it's a fast song. It's got these banging guitars, and then we go to this really slow bit where we repeat just a couple lines, and then we go back to the fast part. Boy, they've done that a lot since Burn Burn. Even Sound the Alarm does that. Granted, I think Sound the Alarm does it better. But it is funny how often they return to that particular motif in their later albums. So Curve. Curve is an improvement. I would pick a couple songs on here to actually be on a definitive Our Lady Peace soundtrack of mine. I think Rabbits is easily in the top 5 songs of their post-2000s career. I think it is a beautiful, well-written, and executed song. I think that If This Is It is another fantastic song that I really like. As Fast As You Can is easily the boppiest song, and while it's got that energy of trying to get on pop radio, I think it's a lot more effective than the attempt with All You Did Was Save My Life. But there was 2 singles off of this album, which was Heavyweight and As Fast As You Can. Heavyweight is kind of weak, I won't lie to you. It's just kind of bombastic, but it's flat. And I really feel like As Fast As You Can is a much better song, and they should have let off with that. Allowance and Fire in the Hen House and Window Seat, and Find Our Way, they're all fine. I wouldn't call them mid, but they're all fine. I also do like Will Someday Change a fair amount. But if I were to pick 3 songs off of here, it would definitely be Rabbits, If This Is It, and As Fast As You Can. The weakest song on here is Metal. which is not even really a song. It's just the band playing a bit over the boxer on the cover, whose name I forget, quoting stuff, which I don't want to listen to. That's not really what I'm there for. Healthy and Paranoid Times. If you've read Isolate, my books, I love Healthy and Paranoid Times as a name, as a lyric, to the point that I named the security company in Isolate after it, because it worked really well. I had a lot of hopes for this album. I actually bought this album as a pre-order through Columbia's website back in 2004, whenever this came out, 2005, to get a couple of the extra live tracks that weren't on the CD. In Repair and The Birdman were bonus tracks if I bought the CD through Columbia directly. So, in a weird circumstance, I have, like, my first digital songs I ever bought were arguably those two, because I got the album physically, if I recall correctly, but those two songs were bonus downloads, and this was when I still had dial-up, if I remember correctly, so that was fun. This album is messy. This album is very messy. And you can kind of see where the messiness is just by looking at when Our Lady Peace 30 hit Volume 3, and it came out last week. It has 5 songs on it, 3 from Gravity and 2 from Healthy. The lead single was Where Are You? And that's the question I have to ask Our Lady Peace 30 Volume 3. Where are you? Where are you? Because you're not there. You are not there at all. Angels Losing Sleep, which was the bigger single, and I believe Will the Future Blame Us is what's on there. I'll double check real quick just to make 100% sure. Yes, can confirm. So, when your lead single, the big song that you decide this is what we're gonna push the album out with to get get the people interested, does not appear in your greatest hits albums or even your own independently released 30-year anniversary, you know that something got a little astray in the process. Angels Losing Sleep is easily the best single, and is one of the strongest songs on the album. I will not deny that. I have a personal preference for Love and Trust. I think that is a fantastic song. I also really like Walking in Circles and Picture. This album has some interesting political swagger with it. Wipe That Smile Off Your Face is pretty directly written about George W. Bush at the time. Will the Future Blame Us, I think, is also pretty politically charged. But there's some songs on here that I just don't think are very good. Don't Stop is the weakest song on this album easily for me. It's just got a weird structure. I kind of want to like World on a String. I really kind of want to like it, but it's got a very jilted sound with its guitars that is not my favorite. Apology is a very good slow song, but in contrast to Picture and Angels Losing Sleep, it's definitely on the weaker side of things. Boy is very U2 inspired. And that's not a bad thing, but it's definitely a little bit outside of what the sound of Our Lady Peace was at that point. But perhaps suggestive of where it was going. And Algemina is too short to really sink into. It's got a really good soundscape, but then it's over already. So in the grand scheme of things, Healthy and Paranoid Times set the band on a bit of a tumultuous career following it, with 2 albums that they struggled to regain any momentum until Jeremy left as the drummer and Jason came in. And again, I do think that some of the B-sides that they never put on the album are better. Not Afraid is such a good song, and they released a few different versions. They even performed it at the Junos before it was anywhere remotely ready to be played. Just spontaneously decided, we're not going to play Somewhere Out There, the song that made us a household name in countries outside of Canada. We're going to play this demo that won't even end up on the final album. Which I do wonder if that was part of the decision making there. But along with that, we have, as I scroll down a little bit to get to Transparent Humans, which was the B-sides, we had Save Yourself, Hurt Yourself, No Warning, Vampire in the Sun, and there were other songs, but those are the ones that they released, along with a couple interesting demos here and there. And I do think that a lot of these would have been more interesting, would have been better. But unfortunately, none of them were released outside of the Transparent Human downloads. Vampire in the Sun should have been on the album. I think that Hurt Yourself should have been on the album, and I think Not Afraid should have been on the album. The live album also had a take of a song that was not released, which was Our Time Is Fading. That never got further than that. And then the Greatest Hits album, their first one, which I'm trying to remember, A Decade, had Better Than Here and Kiss on the Mouth. Which, again, both of those songs were better than quite a few of the songs that I was just criticizing about Healthy. So it's just, it feels very corporate, Healthy and Paranoid Times. I believe Bob Rock was still involved with this one. And it's just a messy album. And definitely it was like the pivoting point for the band to try to actually rediscover themselves, which took a bit, but they finally got closer to where they needed to finally land with a new, more mature sound that stepped away from trying to recapture the Gravity timeline and actually aged and fell into a different position. And that's with Somethingness, which is a 2 EP release. They released 5 songs and 4 songs, and then they eventually combined them into a singular release in 2018. Which is pretty strong. If I were to pick 3 songs that I think are their best, I think that Drop Me in the Water, Ballad of a Poet, and Head Down are probably my 3 favorite songs on here. And I believe all of those were poised to be singles. So at the very least, Our Lady Peace is figuring out, after misfires, what their strongest songs are. But outside of Last Train, honestly, I don't think there's a bad or mid song on here. Last Train is just, it's not that interesting to me. But like Let Me Live Again, Falling Into Place, Missing Pieces, Nice to Meet You, Hiding Place for Hearts, all of those songs are good. This is a step in the right direction for the band and would lead to some experimentation. Around this time, we also got Won't Turn Back, which basically would be a Spiritual Machines 2 hint at where a couple of those songs would go. But there was also Fight the Good Fight that never got put on an album. That was around this time frame as well. But Peace Songs was the Imagine cover, which I will. If you want to talk about my least favorite cover Our Lady Peace has done, it's Imagine, which is tragic. Tragic to me personally. I think their best cover that they've done is either Drive on the live DVD or Eternal Life, which is a bootleg. Needle and the Damage Done is pretty good. The Summertime Sadness cover they did live in 2014 is really good. The Dear Prudence cover is really good. They did a cover of Teardrop that they combined with their Carnival. That's pretty good. Occupy This Album was what it was called. There we go. Anyway, now that we're getting into segues as I'm going along here. But I think that this had something to it, in contrast to Burn, Burn, and Curve, which had more misfires, I think, than good songs. And then we come to the elephant in the room. The moment that the band decided that they wanted to be commercial worldwide and dropped their longtime producer Arnold Lonnie, who had produced Navid through Spiritual Machines, and fired Mike Turner after recording 3 of the songs, saying that his guitar skills were not good enough to continue being a part of the band, which is just saying something, because Gravity is not a guitar tour de force by any stretch of the imagination, and it would take Steve a little while to kind of identify his strengths with the band and actually stand out as more than the replacement for Mike Turner. Gravity is absolutely locked to Somewhere Out There and Innocent. Those 2 songs definitely transformed the band from having huge success in Canada and moderate to mild success elsewhere. People might have heard of Starseed, which was on the Armageddon soundtrack, as well as Navid's big single. Some people probably heard of Superman's Dead and Clumsy off of Clumsy. And maybe One Man Army from Happiness. Spiritual Machines did not have a powerful single in contrast to the other 3 albums. Life in Repair and Right Behind You did not resonate the same way as the prior 3 album singles did. But Gravity changed the face of the band. You can just tell by the cover. Out of these 10 covers, only one has the band front and center on it. And it's Gravity. Only one felt that was the image that they needed to have. Everything else prior to Gravity had their friend Saul Fox doing some sort of artistic thing. So in Navid, he was the Birdman. In Clumsy, he was the trapeze artist that's talked about in one of the songs. In Happiness, he's literally holding a fish, which is a song title. Spiritual Machines, he's the face of the guy on the gurney. And I believe with Spiritual Machines 2, that is his face on the body as well. But they lost that artistic piece and went into mainstream mode with Gravity. That's not to say it's bad, because outside of maybe Story About a Girl, I like to love all of the songs on Gravity. I think that Somewhere Out There and Innocent are fantastic songs that stand up well in comparison to everything else. They would be on my definitive Our Lady Peace list. I would probably slide Sell My Soul as my third choice. I love the atmosphere of that song. But I love Sorry. I love Not Enough. I love Made of Steel. I love Do You Like It and All For You. Bring Back the Sun is not my favorite slow song by Our Lady Peace, but it's good. I think Sell My Soul is the definitive, slow, methodical song on this album. But it's a turning point. The uniqueness of Rain's voice is practically eradicated. He does not hit the falsetto, hardly at all. He does it a little bit on Innocent and on like All For You a little bit. But generally speaking, the way that Rain's voice defined the band's sound was forever changed with Gravity, because he lost the more nasally quality in the falsetto pieces, which his voice is different in the back half of the list in terms of Healthy and Burn Burn and Curve and Somethingness and Spiritual Machines too. It's not the same voice that was on Navid and Clumsy and Happiness and Spiritual Machines. It changed forever here. That's not necessarily a good or a bad thing, but it's a thing that defined the sound of the band. And with Gravity, it's possibly, outside of Spiritual Machines 2, his best vocal work past Spiritual Machines. But I don't think it's as good as what came before it. So, we have a lot of factors. We have Mike Turner leaving, we have Arnold Lonnie leaving, we have Rain changing his voice, Jamie Edwards, who has been with the band with Happiness and the original Spiritual Machines, as well as touring, also left during Gravity. So this album came out, and then it makes sense why Healthy, which followed, was chaos, because they went through a lot of chaos and shakeups to make Gravity the mainstream success that it was, and it would haunt them for quite a while. And I think that it took until Somethingness and then Spiritual Machines 2, which we will get to in a little bit, to find who they were again. So that's the bottom 5. With Gravity being worth listening to, and I think Somethingness being worth listening to, and it's more or less entirety. There's a couple songs that I could cut out. But there would be a fair amount of Gravity and Somethingness on a definitive Our Lady Peace sound, like soundscape for me. More so than Healthy, more so than Curve, more so than Burn Burn. Honestly, with Burn Burn, I could probably just live with Escape Artist. I'm not joking. Let's get to the top half with Navid. This was their first album, and it's a pretty stunning album. If you think about the fact that this was their first full album, they had released an EP that I have a bootleg version of, and the quality of it is absolute trash. But that contained some really raw songs. Out of Here, Blind Anniversary, I'm trying to remember where, I think they called it studio demos. Sorry We're So are some of the songs that didn't make it to Navid. But we've got The Birdman in a demo format, Julia, Super Satellite, and Denied, and Neon Crossing as part of these early demos. And Navid has some strong songs. Starseed, the lead single, was a really kick-ass way to introduce Our Lady Peace as a major label band. It's a really good single. They followed that up with Navid, which is a long but really, really cool guitar-driven track that has a very distinctive sound. And then The Birdman, which is just the opening track and a banger. And a lot of Isolate inspiration comes from this album. Julia, the song Julia, that's where my character Julia got her name from, and some of her character traits are from that song. Neon Crossing is a splendid closer. I love that song a lot. I think it's really, really good. Hope is a really cool song. Denied is a great song. But there are some songs I don't care for all that much. Under Zenith, which ironically is the name of their own label. I don't like that song. I actually don't have it on my playlist because I don't like that song. That's like the one song out of the first 5 albums that I was like, nope, I don't want it. I think Is It Safe and Super Satellite are kind of the weaker songs on this album outside of that. I do like Dirty Walls, and I do like... trying to think what I've not talked about. I think I've talked about everything. I like Dirty Walls, but I don't love Dirty Walls. But if I were to pick 3 songs, personally, that I think define this album for me, Julia's number 1, which is probably not a surprise. Navid, and then probably The Birdman, which again is not a surprise if you have read Isolate at all. I love those 3 songs, but I would probably throw like Neon Crossing and Starseed and possibly Hope onto, and possibly Denied onto a definitive Our Lady Peace soundscape, because I really do think that Navid is a strong debut album. And it only got better, as you can see by what's ahead of it. The newest album, Spiritual Machines 2. Very gutsy, honestly, to return to that album name so many years after the fact. In 2022, the original Spiritual Machines came out in 2000, so it had been 22 years, which is just absolutely wild to think about. But it is Our Lady Peace's strongest album since Spiritual Machines. So it is worthy of the name. And it has a lot of the same conventions. It's got Ray Kurzweil doing interludes, just like with the original Spiritual Machines. It has 15 total tracks, 10 that I believe are actual songs, and 5 that are the Ray Kurzweil conversations. And it has easily some of their strongest work post-Spiritual Machines. Stop Making Stupid People Famous, their first collaboration on an album with Pussy Riot, is a really good dancey song. It was hinted at with Won't Turn Back, but here it is, more polished, more confident. And that's what I love about it. There's confidence on Spiritual Machines 2 that was lacking in Curve, lacking in Burn Burn, and in some ways lacking on some of somethingness. But Spiritual Machines 2, the band is confident, and you can hear it in like all of the playing and all of the singing. It's so good. Holes is my favorite song on this album by a long shot. I really love that song. Run is a really good third. Technically, I think it was the third single, because Holes was the second single. And it's just a good bop. It's got just confidence. It's got swagger. Temporary Healing, Good Die Young, Simulation, 19 Days, Future Disease, Wish You Well, The Message. All of them are good to fantastic. This album's really good. It doesn't match up with the core that is both nostalgia and, just for me, excellence that was clumsy through Spiritual Machines, but it swings for it with a level of bravado that the band has desperately been trying to find, and they grasped it with Spiritual Machines 2. And it's good that I think they named the album that. It was basically like, hey, we're back. We've got ourselves resituated. This is us now. And you can feel that in the Our Lady Peace 30 bonus tracks that they're adding. The confidence is continuing into those. And it's some of Rain's best singing, honestly. In a long time. Very long time. So, if I were to pick 3 songs, Holes, easily, would be number 1. Stop Making Stupid People Famous. It would be number 2 for me. And then probably Future Disease. Or probably Wish You Well. It would be between those two. But I think I'm going to lean with Future Disease. All right, we're going to be in the 90s for the most part for the rest of this. Happiness is not a fish you can catch, which is implied by Saul holding a fish. The follow-up to Clumsy. My understanding is that the American release of Happiness was not mixed correctly in comparison to the Canadian version. So it basically had a completely different sound for whatever reason. But it still sounds good to me. I've listened to a bit of the Canadian version, and I could hear some differences, but in the grand scheme of things, it's fine. I think it was a very good follow-up to Clumsy, but doesn't quite hit the same heights. For me personally, I would pick One Man Army, Thief, and Waited as my top 3 songs. I love those 3 songs to pieces. I think Happiness and the Fish is a really cutting song. I love the lyrics on it. The thing that I think is the issue with Happiness for me is that there's a lot of just slow melancholy songs bunched together. Because we have Happiness in the Fish, then Potato Girl, then Blister. And Potato Girl and Blister just kind of blur together to me in my mind, even though both of those songs are excellent. Lying Awake follows Is Anybody Home, which was the second single, is also really good. I like that song a lot. Lying Awake is probably the last really strong album for me. I like Annie. I named the character Annie in Isolate after this song. But I don't think it's the strongest song, and I feel like it's the beginning of the slide for the end of the album, which is why it's 3rd place and not 2nd. Because I don't like Consequence of Laughing all that much, and Stealing Babies, which does have Elwyn Jones helping on drumming. So he's truly the first collaborator, but he didn't sing anything. This album is also interesting in that, if I recall correctly, no, I think that's Spiritual Machines. I'm trying to remember where Pearl Jam's drummer jumped in for a couple tracks because Jeremy broke his arms or something. Anyway, I'm pretty sure that that's Spiritual Machines, though. Happiness is perhaps the bitterest album that Our Lady Peace put out. It's just got a sad edge to it that makes it kind of depressive. And that's not to say that Our Lady Peace is necessarily an optimistic band, but this one definitely feels like it's got the most acidic edge to it. So that's probably why I don't like it as much as the 2 that are ahead of it, but I still think it's the 3rd best album they've put out. upwards to Clumsy in 1997, the first album of theirs I heard, and still probably the most influential one they made, to be completely honest. This is where the sound really locked in. Like, Navid is a little different than the Clumsy through Spiritual Machines era. Navid is got a little less of the falsetto singing. It's a little less nasally in terms of Rain, and it's got a heavier guitar edge to it. Edge is a word I'm saying a lot tonight. I apologize. Clumsy is like true alternative. It is finding its own distinctive place in the radioscape. Superman's Dead is one of the most unique songs I've ever heard. It is biting with like just pure critique of how our culture emphasizes the wrong things. And about it's indirectly talking about how TV is taking over things. And it's a really good opening track. One of the best that I've ever heard. And then it just kind of goes from there, with Automatic Flowers being just this wild exploration of Sarah, if I remember correctly. Carnival completely switching gears and having this really slow ambient noise to kind of start us off. You hear footsteps, and then Rain starts singing, and there's just this very light guitar, and then it just rips once it gets going. And it's such a good song. Big Dumb Rocket is one of the heavier songs on this album. It's probably one of the closer ones to Navid, but it's really good. And then there's 4 a.m., one of my favorite songs of all time. I love 4 a.m. It is so powerful to me. It is one of the best slow songs of all time for me personally. Shaking is just this really fascinating look into either a friendship or a relationship that's just going awry. And then Clumsy. Clumsy is a song about friendship and watching other people fall into these holes and wanting to do something, and you can't. You just have to watch from a distance. It's just a great song. Hello Oscar is another one of the heavier tracks on this album. That Rain really just cuts loose on. It's really fantastic. Let You Down in the Story of 100 Isles are probably the two that I like the least on this album. They kind of blend together for me. But Car Crash is a splendid, slow, methodical... I don't want to call it a ballad, but it's just like... It just makes you think. It really makes you think. If I were to pick 3 songs off of here to be the best, it'd be 4 a.m. easily. And then probably Superman's Dead. And then it would be a toss-up, honestly, between Car Crash and Big Dumb Rocket, I think, for me. And last but not least, our number 1 album is Spiritual Machines. A true experiment where the band probably felt forced to do Gravity in some ways after this album, because it was pretty unspectacular in terms of sales, is my understanding. It was truly meant to be more of a statement record than a single record. Life was the first single. It kind of just came and went. And Repair was the second single. It just kind of came and went, although I think it was a stronger single. And then Right Behind You, Mafia, was the third single. that I think they made a music video for, but they didn't release it at the time, or it was very limited. The album just came and went, and Gravity came out in 2001, if I remember correctly. So this was a album that had very little time to breathe. And it's a shame, because it's their best album. It has the best songs that they've ever made. And there is not a single misfire, I feel, on this entire album. Right Behind You Mafia is a great opening song. It goes right into In Repair, which just is brilliant, start to finish. The live version on the live DVD is my favorite Our Lady Peace song, period. I love this song. Life is probably the weakest song on this album, to be honest, but it is still good. It is still excellent, and it has good messaging. It's definitely got that anthemic vibe that Gravity was built on, and it doesn't quite match the rest of the album. Because then we get into Middle of Yesterday, which is just the blazer that we were looking for on this album, because Right Behind You isn't super heavy, but then here comes Middle of Yesterday that just hits you. And then we get the slowest, probably the most thoughtful song. It's another song about friendship and wanting to do something for people, and you feel that you have a distance, you have this wall that they have put up that prevents you from doing what you want, with Are You Sad? Which is another one of my favorite songs that Our Lady Peace has ever done. Made to Heal, another fantastic song. This is just a bop to me. I love that song. Everyone's a Junkie, another blistering track that has some of the most fascinating lyrics to it out of all their songs. All My Friends is the other song I'm not the biggest fan of, but I think that it leads really nicely into If You Believe, which is one of my favorite Our Lady Peace songs. And then it's followed by The Wonderful Future, which is arguably my favorite ending track for an Our Lady Peace album outside... I can't say outside of Rabbits because I pretend metal doesn't exist. It is my favorite ending track of any Our Lady Peace album. It is so good and so thoughtful and so critical, which is basically what Spiritual Machines is. It's a critique of humanity in a lot of ways, in the direction that it was going in 2000, which Spiritual Machines 2 continues. But it was an album that was truly a risk. They made a risky album with Spiritual Machines, and they kind of paid for it, because they had to basically rebound with an incredibly commercial album with Gravity, and then try to regain their original sense of self. And it took 3 albums to find it again. Arguably 4. But that is my thoughts on my favorite band in their albums. And you got a little bit of like in-between stuff in there as well. I will add that the Spiritual Machines acoustic album that currently is a side A with no side B for the last 4 tracks, which is weird. Someday we'll get Everyone's a Junkie, All My Friends, If You Believe, in The Wonderful Future. Don't know when. But that's a really good album or EP that you could pick up if you are really into acoustic stuff and love what you heard on Spiritual Machines. It's good. It's definitely a period where it was around somethingness, but not quite the Spiritual Machines 2. But you can start hearing like the band coming into itself with that one and reconnecting with its original sound in a lot of ways. It's really cool. Thank you for joining me, everybody. I just love this band, and I love the fact that I got to talk about them for a while and just kind of geek out about Our Lady Peace. A very different episode of Levels Plus Whenever, but I hope that you didn't mind and that you got some enjoyment out of this near hour of rambling about music. Well, I'm going to call it there. I will see you next time I see you. Take care, friends. And again, thank you for listening.